It is time for football chatter on the show, and today's guest is going to be Ryan Wallace with the Verbal Commitment podcast. Him and Kevin Flaherty hosting the show. If you want to get up to date with anything going on with high school football recruiting, either in the state of Kansas, the KC metro area, or even on the other side of the border in Missouri, you got to go check out the podcast through the KC Sports Network. That is the Verbal Commitment podcast. Ryan, appreciate you jumping on. And now we're fully into that season now. It's getting started. It's already here. Like, my first question would be, like, how do you stay up to date with so many of the recruits throughout the states? Like, how do you keep track of everybody?
Well, I think first off, it's just trying to keep a good pulse of, teams and players that are kind of coming up. You always want to be, trying to stay ahead of the game. And so you're not trying to figure out names and prospects when it's their senior seasons. Sometimes that happens, but yeah, the more kind of up to date and prepared you can be. So for myself and Kevin, we've already got, an Excel spreadsheet that's just kind of between us that we've already got some 2029 names that are on there, 2028s. And so usually it's kind of starts with, sophomores, certainly juniors, and you get a chance to see and hopefully meet some of these kids in person at camps, combines, 7-on-7. But then beyond that, I think one of the things that Kevin and I have found is obviously having a good relationship with the coaches in the area. And also, it's become important to get to know some trainers in the area. A lot of these guys now, especially in Kansas, well, and Missouri too, but I say especially in Kansas since they don't have some of the jamborees and some of the dedicated summer practice time that a lot of the guys on the Missouri side do. They're still working deep into the summers with whether it's strength and conditioning trainers for quarterbacks. Sometimes there's a quarterback specialist or receivers and DBs kind of working on their craft at their positions, getting to know those guys. They've been great outlets in terms of letting us know, hey, there might be a kid on the come up. And so I would say those are usually the biggest things that we can do is just staying glued to huddle and staying as up to date and as connected as we possibly can with the coaches and trainers in the area.
All right, let's dive into some of those names, Ryan. If I'm a high school football fan and I'm going to pay money to watch any game in the state of Kansas this year, who are some of the guys, one or two guys that are piquing your interest that, hey, this is worth the ticket?
Well, I think it's funny because we just had an episode on verbal commitment come out last week where this was an actual topic between Kevin and I of a must-have ticket as we previewed the state of Kansas. And I think for me, it was a no doubter. I tried not to even think twice about it. And it's Great Bend at Hayes. I think not only you get kind of your bang for your buck in two different ways there. First off, from a recruiting standpoint, you get an opportunity to see arguably the state's best player, tight end Ian Premer, that's committed to Notre Dame, and quite possibly the two best players in the next year's cycle, which would be the 2027 cycle. So these are players that are just juniors entering their junior seasons this fall. And that would be Cooper Onmott from Great Bend as well, and Gus Corsair, the center at Hayes. So
Yeah.
from a recruiting standpoint, you get to see three of the best players in the state for either the 26 and 27 cycles at one time. But also you have the kind of underlying element that is the revenge factor, because you've got these two schools out there in the WAC that I don't think like each other very much. And you have Hayes, who knocked off Great Bend last year, and a Great Bend team that was kind of on their way, the number one seed in 5A, gets knocked out by Hayes. Hayes ends up on this remarkable run, gets to the 5A state title game and falls to Aquinas. Well, now you've got Hayes that comes in this season with several of those guys returning, including Gus Corsair. They're opening up a new facility at Hayes, so it's kind of their first season at the new stadium, brand new turf. And now
Right.
you've got guys like Cooper, guys like Ian and Daxton at Great Bend that have that revenge factor, that now get to go into Hayes late in the year with some playoff seeding on the line, with a chance to really spoil Hayes and again kind of extend some revenge to an Indians team again that knocked them out last year. So that one comes to mind. If I had to go with another one, just for fun to add one more to the mix, Wichita Northwest. They actually uh, have a really, really, really talented team. Jalen Mason is the KU commit at quarterback. And obviously, his name has been around for a couple years now, but they've got several other guys that will end up playing at the FCS level, and possibly some underclassmen that you're going to hear their names called quite a bit here in the coming years, that will probably also get to the Power 4 level. They are loaded. And when it comes to a roster, they might have as much talent as anybody in the state. And I think Coach Martin might have the most pressure on him to deliver with that talent than maybe any time in his, almost 15 years there with that team. They travel a regular season game, I believe it's at Manhattan. And so you get a chance to see the two future Jayhawks go at it. Jalen Mason at quarterback, J.J. Dunnigan in the defensive backfield for Manhattan. Manhattan returns a ton. They've been in the conversation for state title each of the last 3 years, it feels like, if not winning it. So I think Joe Schartz has a lot of talent coming back. I think J.J. Dunnigan will be first, front and center in that. And so having a chance to see the duel between Jalen Mason and all that talent for the Wichita Northwest offense against an always strong, physical, tenacious Manhattan defense, those are two games that really jump out for me on the Kansas side.
Ryan Wallace with the Verbal Commitment Podcast joining us here. Last question for you, Ryan. You guys do a phenomenal job of just kind of ranking some of those top prospects and guys that you kind of mentioned that you need to look out for. I will say mention any guys that are maybe under the radar, but maybe a guy or two that's gaining some momentum on the recruiting trail that hasn't committed yet.
Whew, that's tough because
I know.
there are so many players right now that it feels like have committed. So trying to rack my brain here of some players that have not committed. In terms of a guy though that I think flies under the radar, and he has committed already, but a player that I've been a fan of since watching him on the camp circuit last year, and it's kind of an interesting story because he gets a chance now to go back to Hutchinson after a year at Wichita East, and that's Robert Hunter, committed to South Dakota State. Tremendous speed, just a sensational athlete. I'm a big fan of his. Again, we'll get a chance to see him at corner and at quarterback, I think, for Hutchinson. But I think he's a guy that kind of immediately comes to mind as somebody that, again, has continued to fly under the radar, even though he's committed to, a national championship level FCS team. I'll tell you one guy that I think has generated some steam in the offseason that's a skill position player that has not committed yet. And another guy like Robert Hunter that kind of has some a multi-sport background, but a kid that, could play maybe a number of different positions at the next level, depending on where you like him. I think he's going to end up being a receiver. In high school, he's going to play some quarterback, and I think probably some receiver. But Braden Maivella at Mays is a name that he's gotten some Power 4 level attention, Cole. I mean, some schools as far as Boston College have come and kind of check him out a little bit. He, again, doesn't have a whole lot of tape as a receiver because last year he did some things at quarterback, and I believe the year before he was strictly a receiver, but that was Mays coming off the Avery Johnson era, and so they were kind of still trying to find a quarterback. So if you go and watch his tape, the quarterback stuff is electric. But I think, again, where he's going to be as a receiver, you don't get to see a whole lot of that on tape. But knowing what he's done with a trainer, Coach Rashad Daniels, down in the Wichita area, seeing what he's been able to do in training, going up against guys in the offseason, trying to really dedicate himself to becoming a better receiver. This is a kid that's got 6'3" level length and height, great athlete. I think he runs somewhere in the 4.5 40 range, and he's got tremendous hops as a kind of all city league type basketball player. He is a kid that if he comes out these first couple weeks for Mays and puts on a show, there's going to be some real pressure for college coaches to say, yeah, he might not be as polished and as, ready now a receiver as we'd like to have. But I think the athletic profile and what you're going to see him do is, again, going to put some coaches in a tough scenario of, we don't really want to leave this guy hanging too much longer. I think there will be a coach out there that's going to put some belief into being able to coach him up, getting him kind of in a regimen for a year and redshirting him. He could be a breakout college player at the next level. And I think probably somebody that has FBS level talent. We'll see if he has to start the FCS first and then maybe do the transfer portal step up. But he's a really, really high level player that is still on the market. And it might just be because, he doesn't have a lot of film at his college position. But that's a name that I would keep an eye on here week 3, week 4, see if offers don't start coming in for Braden Maivela.
Ryan, appreciate the time and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Cole. Appreciate you for having me.
That is Ryan Wallace, him and Kevin Flaherty hosting the Verbal Commitment Podcast. Make sure you check it out on the KC Sports Network.